I'm stable, oh yeah, no label, oh yeah, you know me. I have only a path, I'm lonely, but damn, I'm going to win, yeah.
I'm from Canada. I grew up in Ontario, and Toronto is my home base right now. What got me started in entrepreneurship? I'm going to rewind like back to my early life. So, coming up in school, I had a pretty rough go. When I was about 6 years old, my parents split up and remarried, and by the age of 9, I moved away from the country. I was living in the country, and we moved to the suburbs. And I had a really rough time in school. I got picked on and bullied a lot, and I found that there just wasn't a great deal of support from the school system, from the educational institution. And I always had really big ideas. I was a very creative person from a young age. And so coming up in school, I always had these visions of my future as being something that I was sort of in the pilot seat. I thought of opening restaurants. I thought of opening art galleries. I had all these ideas. And one day in grade 5, these career specialists came into the school, and it was their job. They said, we're going to tell you what you're going to do when you grow up. So they got us to write this essay on, what we wanted to do. And I was an 11-year-old boy at the time, and I just discovered paintball. And so I thought, wow, this is just so cool, right? And my essay was on a business that I wanted to create. So I thought, well, I live in the suburbs where there's nothing to do. Kids are bored. They're getting themselves into trouble because they don't have any recreation. Why don't I save up some money, buy some cheap farmland, and open up a paintball field? And from that, that was just a great idea for me at the time, because I get to do what I love. I get to hire other people to run the business for me, so that I can have the freedom and flexibility to move around, and I'd be providing a good service for the community, right? And so that was sort of a defining moment for me in my life, because I presented this idea to these specialists, and they said, oh, this will never work. Paintball making machines cost $1 million. And they just sort of shot holes in my idea. And then they said, well, don't worry though, you're going to be a really good lawyer when you grow up. That's your career path, lawyer. And so right there, that was it for me. I said, this school system is not for me. I'm a creator. I don't want to be someone else's employee. I don't want someone else telling me what I'm going to do. And so that was the moment when I decided to actually drop out of school. Now, I couldn't drop out of school in grade 5. The cops would have just dragged me kicking and screaming back. So it was a couple of years of struggling through that system before I finally checked out. And that was a rough decision, because my parents didn't accept it, obviously. And so I ended up kicked out of the house and on the streets around age 13. So I spent my teenage years traveling around Canada, getting myself into all kinds of trouble, living on the streets, just sort of roughing it, learning what the world was like from the other end of the spectrum, right? And so that ultimately made me very sick. I got really sick, and mentally, emotionally, physically just drained from the whole experience. But I learned a lot. And I learned a lot about what it was like to suffer, and what type of challenges people go through in the various different systems of the world that sort of fail people in a lot of cases. And that led me to my first entrepreneurial endeavor as a health and wellness practitioner. So I spent my 20s studying yoga and meditation and various different holistic wellness practices to become a practitioner, and built a fairly thriving practice in my late 20s. I really was doing quite well down in the city in Toronto where I was living, helping people live healthier lives, helping people learn more about diet and their bodies and how to take care of themselves. And that was going really well. And I thought that would be my career for the rest of my life. That was sort of my vision. And I think I always had a vision of that being something a little bit bigger, but I didn't know how it was going to happen. And then a couple of years ago, about 3 years ago, I moved. I met a woman and we fell in love, and I moved way up north, away from the city and away from my client base. And that was a very challenging experience. And what I realized is that my wellness and my career, my own personal wellness, my financial well-being was contingent upon me being exposed to a large audience in the major metropolitan center of Toronto. And my career just sort of went down the drains. And as it did, money problems came up, the relationship struggled, and ultimately fell apart. And at the end of that sort of 3-year period, I realized that something really, really had to change, because I was dependent on circumstances that I couldn't control. And I wanted more freedom. I wanted more freedom of time. I wanted more freedom to travel. And that's when I discovered the world of online marketing and realized that I could create a business online and run it from anywhere, and I could take my time back. And that for me was a really big factor in my decision to come to the digital marketing space. But another thing that really sunk in when I found this industry was I realized that bigger vision that I had, it wasn't a pipe dream. I wanted to open up retreat centers. I wanted to open up wellness resorts and things like that. And I know that things like that cost millions of dollars. Mm-hmm. And so I never knew when I was just trading my time for money, hours for dollars, massaging people, giving people treatments. I was getting paid really good money, but there was no way that I could do that every day for the rest of my life and not have enough money to open up these centers. And so when I discovered the online space and I realized the kind of abundance that people were creating in a very short period of time, all of a sudden these goals that I had relegated to the realm of pipe dream became very real. And I saw the pathway towards the path and the mechanism by which I was going to create my vision and what ultimately I feel like I'm here on planet Earth to do. It's my mission, my job in the world is to create these spaces. So that's a little bit of my backstory and how I came to the online space.
Oh yeah, I'm stable. Oh yeah, no label. Oh yeah, you know me. I have